Okay, in this lesson here, what we're going to do is take a look at some commands that are very useful for checking statistics and rendering. Okay, so this is just ways of getting various pieces of information brought back to you that could be very useful in tweaking your game.
The first thing we want to take a look at is the stat command, because there's a lot of information that would be very helpful to you that's not obviously apparent, like, say, in level optimization, you want to test how much is currently being drawn or why your map is running slow. I mean, you could use like a frame counter or just see what the game's running at, but that really doesn't tell you exactly where the problem could be.
Exactly. So just to prove to them that there really is a lot of information that stat can give you, go ahead and ask for all the stats. So stat space all.
And wow, check that out.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, it's so many stats that if you look over in the left-hand side, especially in the upper left-hand corner, you'll see that there's stats that are overriding one another. So that's not good.
So unless you have a very high resolution and very good eyesight, this command can be a bit overwhelming.
Exactly. So fortunately, there's various ways that we can break the stats down so that we can specify what specific piece of information we're looking for. So let's go ahead first and just show them stat none so that we can get rid of all
Even though
that.
it can't really be seen in the background, what I just typed is stat none, and that is clear everything you're currently looking at using the stat command.
All right, cool. So probably one of the most useful ones. Let's go ahead and bring up the frames per second.
So stat FPS. Yay, frame counter.
There you go. Hey, that's a pretty decent frame rate considering that we're recording video and audio and a whole bunch of other stuff. Very nice. Okay, so yeah, that's...
Of course, through the playback of the video, the actual AVI said 10 frames a second, so they're like, why is the number at 100-something?
Exactly, yes. So, all right, next one we're going to do is we're going to look at render. Okay, so it's going to be stat space render. But check out what's going to happen with the frames per second stuff.
It stays there.
It stays, that's
So
right.
as you load up different stat commands, all the old stats will probably stay there in most cases. So this way we can load up, that way we have a frame counter, even though it's a little bit hidden, and the rest, and some more information about things. Again, like I was saying before, even just a frame counter might not be all you need to find out what is making a level slow.
Right.
With stat render, we have basically everything that the engine's rendering broken up into categories. And at the very top left, we have just the milliseconds it's taking to render the frame, and that's the total. After that, it's broken down into how many milliseconds per every type of item it draws. We have BSP, we have terrain.
Watch this. This can make things really simple to understand. Go ahead and take your character and go back into the hallway behind you and make it, or maybe look at any wall where you're not looking at any static meshes.
Or very few.
Or very few, yeah. And then go ahead and point out the fact that your static mesh is in the middle near the bottom. So you can see we're looking at 400 triangles right now, and how long is it taking to draw the triangles, et cetera, et cetera. Now watch this. So we can go ahead and turn around and look out into the arena itself. Okay, so now we've gone from 400 to 30,219, and we're taking almost 2 milliseconds for drawing all these triangles. So this is really good to be able to go in there and say, all right, am I drawing too many triangles right now? Do I have too much going on in my static meshes? Is it what's responsible for slowing me down? And again, you can use this information. You can look and you can see terrain information at the top, deco layer information as well. There's mesh information. There's just so much information that's given to you right here. And using this, you can really help tweak what's going on in your level that could be causing slowdowns.
So another neat thing to point out now is, again, we have the result of stat FPS and stat render right now. If I was to hit the up arrow key and run stat render again,
it's a toggle.
Most stat commands do run as a toggle. So if you wanted to activate one and then deactivate it and leave everything else up, you can always just rerun the same command instead of always running stat none.
Okay, so now let's go ahead and look at stat net.
Now stat net is usually bound to the F6 key, so stat net or F6. Now, of course, we're not in a net game now, so all this is going to be zeroed out. But in a net game, this will, of course, tell you your ping, what the loss is, as well as how much bandwidth is being used in and out, how many packets are being sent, and so on. Mm-hmm. Now, not only useful for just gameplay in general to keep a constant eye on your ping, but if you're writing a mod that has netplay functionality, then it's cool to test this against maybe just the default game and see if there's a significant amount of lag induced from something you're trying to do through script.
Exactly. So, again, very important information when you're putting together that perfect level. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look at stat game now.
First thing I'll do is hit F6, which is toggle stat net back off. So, stat game. Well, this will just bring up some things that the engine is having to constantly calculate to keep the game running. For example, collision. You're standing on the floor, maybe you're running into a static mesh. Good to keep an eye on just in case you have a very complex mesh that you might not have made a collision model for. And just to check, like say your floor was very high detail, like you make a mosaic out of a static mesh or something.
Right.
Just making sure that you're not inducing any kind of slowdown just from the engine having to do a lot of calculation regarding collision. Another very useful thing is down, one down from that, karma.
Yeah,
if
karma.
you're working with vehicles, you'll want to keep a very close eye on that to make sure that your vehicle physics isn't eating too much of the game time.
Right.
And
now, all that right now is pretty much at 0 on all the karma. We can make that come to life for a second, can't we?
Yep. Could do suicide, but this is a little bit easier.
Yeah. Come to life.
Check
Look
that
at all
out.
the numbers. All the numbers are running as our ragdoll just lays there.
Not too much as a ragdoll is really efficient.
Right.
And then another interesting thing is at the bottom where we have game, the first thing under the game section is script milliseconds. Very good to keep an eye on and a very good readout for if you're programming something and you're starting to get into some deep Unreal script. Just to keep an eye on those scripts and make sure that those aren't taking too much game time.
Exactly.